Imagine for just 1 second, Night City survives all the way until the 40th millennium. It's one of those planets just out in the Imperium somewhere. Trauma Team from Night City is still a thing. Still saving people. What do you think that would look like in the 41st millennium? Maybe, just maybe, they would look like these guys. So I recently went on holiday, and while on holiday I spent an inordinate amount of money on Warhammer, but I'm going to justify it by saying I was supporting the local economy because I'm a good person like that. It's not just buying more stuff that I'm never going to work on. But part of my 2025 New Year resolution is working on all of the stuff that I probably would have never worked on, starting with the stuff that I just bought. I saw an Instagram reel from El Mini Turista on Instagram showing how he just did a very quick and easy glow effect, similar to how I would usually do glow on one of the bases provided with the Necromunda miniatures. And considering I had just bought some Necromunda, I thought it was kind of perfect to give that a go. This, coupled with the fact that I've recently been just listening to some lore videos about CyberPunk and that universe while painting, and this glow effect in this kind of a city gives a very cyberpunk feeling, why not paint these guys to be in that cyberpunk universe? So my Spyre team for Necromunda is going to be loosely painted in the same scheme as the Trauma team. So I started out by painting these bases. It was super simple. All I did was just do a couple of layers of dry brushing. I used 2 progressively brighter grays. Then I airbrushed in the vents just to block in the white and then create a little bit of glow around that with some white ink through an airbrush. I filled in the vents themselves with white ink, airbrushed over them with Vallejo fluorescent red in this case. And then just to add another layer and a little bit more color interest, I just dotted in the corners with more white ink and then covered over that with Vallejo fluoro orange. Then it was time to paint the actual miniature itself. So I started by just base coating the armor. So I wanted to do it in 2 sections, same colors as the Trauma team, a white section and a dark gray section, and then keep the fatigues of the model green. So to base coat the dark gray, I used German gray from AK 3rd Gen, and to base coat the white sections, I used a mixture of Basalt Grey and Rock Grey from AK 3rd Generation as well. I then started out working on the highlighting for the armor panels for the white section. I did this in 3 layers, so I added a significant amount more of the rock grey to the basalt grey, probably until it was about a 4-to-1 mix, and just added some scratchy, dotted, textured highlights. I want these guys to look kind of rough and gritty, so I'm not being super particular about blending them perfectly. Once this was down, the next step was to add white to that mixture. So I added about 50-50 white to this, did another layer, pulling in the amount of coverage that I had. And then after that, I just added some tiny little highlights, dots and scratches into the highest point of those highlighted areas with some pure white. I then essentially just did the exact same thing with the gray parts, and I did a lot of the kind of interconnected metal gobbledygook bits in the same colors. So I started out with that German gray, and I don't actually have any kind of cold grays in my AK at the moment. So I went with Vallejo's game color steel gray and wolf gray, and just basically went from one layer to the next, just adding scratchy dotted highlights and pulling in the amount of coverage, just kind of in a direction that makes sense if everything is being lit from the same angle.
While painting this guy, I actually spent a lot of time just kind of thinking about New Year's resolutions, which usually would be kind of a thing that I wouldn't care so much about. I think they're kind of cliche and dumb, but I'm actually starting to come around and think that they're a nice kind of important thing. It's a good time to really reflect on everything and plan out what you want out of your next year and set some goals, even if they're a little bit too lofty to achieve, but just as a baseline for things that you want to get done. Now, I've made kind of inconsistent pushes with this YouTube thing, but one of the things that I really want to do this year is be consistent in making content for you guys. So one of my main goals is making a video every single week and building out a base from there, whether that be content for Patreon, the Instagram, or wherever else. Most of the people that watch these videos aren't actually subscribed. So if you want to jump along and help me be kept accountable for these goals, I'd really appreciate it.
I then went with black, green, and green sky from AK 3rd Gen. So black green is a really nice rich dark green, kind of similar to, a Dark Angel's green. I base coated all of the fatigues and kind of, just any bits that are cloth with that. And then just adding slightly more green sky from AK 3rd Gen in, just added some scratchy textured highlights in the exact same way as everything else. Then it was time to just start tackling all of the other little details on these guys. It was time consuming. These guys have tons of little bits of detail everywhere, as a lot of newer GW models do. I knew I needed to add some red into the model and keep that quite prominent to sell this scheme. So using hull red, wine red, and deep orange from AK, I just did some quick red trim around the model to make that a nice accent color. I also really wanted to add the Trauma Team logo somewhere on the model. So he has this nice little chest thing. I don't know what it's, I guess it's to put their gang logo on. So I just quickly freehanded something similar to the Trauma Team logo in white and then glazed over that, pulling into the outer recesses with Vallejo Fluoro Red. After a couple of layers of this, I just added a tiny bit of fluoro red to some white and just kind of added some stippled highlights into the center of the logo as well. I initially was going to do a pretty warm tone for the skin. The base of this was going to be Cadian flesh tone from Games Workshop, but Games Workshop pots being Games Workshop pots, it was unusable. So for the skin, I ended up settling on a wine red as a base and just adding some Vallejo Game Color Pale Flesh in for one or two kind of progressively brighter layers. And then I just added white in to desaturate it because I figured as I started painting it, I thought, he probably doesn't see a whole lot of sunlight, so let's just make him look kind of pale and sickly. And of course, keeping with the cyberpunk theme, he has to have lots of glowy bits. So I filled in the little coils on his Volkite kind of wrist gauntlet pistols with white ink, as well as the little backpack generator thing, and then just glazed over that with blue and red fluorescent paint from Vallejo Fluoro Color. After fucking around with all of the other little details like his straps, and I ended up deciding to do all of his cables as hazard cables for some dumb reason, I gave him a nice gloss varnish. I did want to put a kind of hospital cross on him somewhere. I thought I may have one in a transfer sheet somewhere, but I didn't, so I just freehanded one before doing that. But the benefit of gloss varnishing him is, one, I'm protecting the paint, but two, this sets me up to do a quick oil wash. So I just pin washed a brown oil into all of the little cracks and recesses one, this adds some definition to him, and two, it makes him look a little bit less clean, little bit more worn. Now, between all the little metal bits, there's, you know, grease, grime, dirt, all that kind of thing, which I think adds to the feeling that I wanted for these guys. I think these bits are meant to be rivets, but Rule of Cool and also CyberPunk Glow, I painted all of the little rivet bits white and then just glazed over them with Vallejo Fluorocolor Red. Because why wouldn't I want my hulking monstrosity of a security medical officer looking like a fucking Christmas tree? Now it was kind of time to go back to what actually sold wanting to do this scheme in the first place, the glow. I turned him upside down, gave him a quick dry brush with just some brighter grays from bottom up onto his legs just to catch the edges, and then very carefully from underneath, picking angles where I wouldn't overspray onto kind of the top section of the model, I added some glow with Vallejo Fluorocolor Red, common theme of this video, with an airbrush. Then after securing him to his base, which was actually surprisingly annoying because these models come with kind of tactical rock-ish bits built into their feet, which you actually have to cut away, and I didn't do a perfect job, so he wasn't completely flat. This is what I was left with. As a start to my Necromunda gang, I'm pretty chuffed with this actually. It took longer than I expected, but that's okay. It's Necromunda. There's not going to be a ton of models to this. I don't mind spending a little bit of extra time on them. Please hold me to it. Hopefully this is a force that I can actually complete this year. But this guy was a nice little palette cleanser after finishing the model that I've just finished previous to this, which will be in a video still to come. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and like it. Leave a comment with what you might want to see in the future. For that, I will see you guys in the next one. I initially... Oh.